Rowan Hale didn't expect to find anyone living in his dead father's house. He especially didn't expect her to point a rifle at his chest. "Get off my property," the woman said, her voice steady despite the child coughing somewhere behind her. "Your property?" Rowan's laugh came out bitter. "Lady, I own this place." "Not anymore." She cocked the hammer. "Papers say different. The house he'd abandoned 5 years ago, the one he'd sworn he'd never see again, had become someone else's fortress. And the ghosts he'd been running from? They were about to drag him straight into a war he never wanted to fight. If you want to see how far this story reaches, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. Now, let me tell you how it all began. The road to Blackwood Estate hadn't improved in 5 years. If anything, it had gotten worse, rutted and overgrown, swallowed by prairie grass and bramble, as if the land itself wanted to erase any trace of the Hale family name. Rowan guided his horse through the mess, his jaw tight, his mind already counting the hours until he could turn around and leave this place in the dust for good. He wasn't coming home. Home was a word for people who had something worth returning to. This was just business. Sign the papers, hand the keys to whatever buyer his lawyer had scraped up, and walk away with enough money to disappear somewhere the name Hale meant nothing. The house appeared through the trees like a skeleton. 2 stories of peeling paint and sagging shutters, the wraparound porch half collapsed on the east side. The barn had given up entirely, its roof caved in like a broken promise. Rowan pulled his horse to a stop and stared. 5 years. He'd left it to rot on purpose. He swung down from the saddle, boots hitting frozen ground. November had stripped the frontier bare. No color left, just gray sky and brown earth, and the kind of cold that got into your bones and stayed there. He tied the reins to what remained of the fence post and started toward the house. That's when he saw the smoke. Thin, gray. Rising from the chimney, Rowan stopped mid-step. His hand dropped to the pistol at his hip. Someone was inside. Squatters, probably. Drifters looking for shelter before the real winter hit. He'd dealt with them before, back when he still cared about the property. A few hard words usually did the trick. If not, the gun convinced them. He climbed the porch steps slowly, testing each board. Half of them groaned. One cracked under his weight. The front door was shut but not locked. Couldn't be, since the lock had broken years ago. He pushed it open. Warmth hit him first, actual heat radiating from the fireplace in the front room. Then the smell, something cooking, bread maybe, and the faint antiseptic bite of carbolic soap. His eyes adjusted to the dim interior. The place had been cleaned. Not well, but someone had tried. The floors were swept. The furniture, what little remained, had been pushed into some kind of order. A table, 2 chairs, a blanket draped over the broken window to keep out the draft. "Don't move." The voice came from the shadows to his left. Female. Steady. Rowan turned his head slowly. She stood near the staircase, a rifle leveled at his chest. Young. Mid-20s, maybe. Dark hair pulled back in a braid, face pale and sharp-boned like she'd been hungry for a while. Her dress was patched in 3 places, the hem muddy, but her hands didn't shake. Not even a little. "You've got 10 seconds to explain why you're in my house," Rowan said. "Your house?" Her eyes narrowed. "Try again." "I'm Rowan Hale. This estate belonged to my father. He's dead. That makes it mine." "No." She shook her head once, sharp. "It's mine. I've got papers." "Papers?" Rowan almost laughed. "Lady, I don't know who sold you a lie, but Mama?" The voice was small, weak. A boy appeared at the top of the stairs, maybe 6 years old, wrapped in a blanket that dragged on the floor. His face was flushed, his breathing labored. He coughed, wet and rattling, and the woman's jaw tightened. "Go back to bed, Thomas," she said, not taking her eyes off Rowan. "Is he leaving?" "Yes." "No," Rowan said flatly. "I'm not going anywhere until I see these so-called papers." The boy coughed again, harder this time, and stumbled against the banister. The woman moved without thinking. Rifle still in one hand, she caught the child with the other, steadying him. The gun dipped, just for a second. Rowan didn't draw. He could have. Should have, maybe. But something about the way she held the kid fierce and fragile at the same time, made him hesitate. Go, she told the boy. I'll bring you tea in a minute. Thomas looked at Rowan with wide, glassy eyes, then shuffled back down the hall. The woman waited until she heard a door close before she spoke again. You want to see the deed? She said. Fine, but you put that pistol on the floor first. Not happening. Then we've got a problem. They stared at each other. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters. Rowan exhaled through his nose. I'm not here to hurt you. Don't care what you're here for, you're trespassing. It's my land. Prove it. He reached slowly into his coat, pulling out a folded envelope. Deed's in here. Signed by my father 15 years ago. Witnessed. Legal. She didn't lower the rifle. Anyone can fake a deed. Same goes for you. Her mouth twisted. Papers are upstairs. In the desk. Then go get them. And leave you down here? I don't think so. Rowan spread his hands. So what do you suggest? You wait outside. In the cold. Should have thought of that before you barged in. I didn't barge. I own. Get out. The rifle lifted an inch. Her finger rested on the trigger. Not pulling. Not yet. But ready. Rowan studied her face. No hesitation there. No bluff. She'd shoot if she had to. He believed that. All right, he said quietly. I'll wait on the porch. But I'm not leaving. Not until we settle this. We'll see. He backed toward the door, hands still visible, and stepped outside. The cold hit him like a fist. He pulled his coat tighter and leaned against the porch railing, staring out at the dead land he'd tried so hard to forget. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The door opened. She came out holding a piece of paper, the rifle slung over her shoulder now. She handed him the document without a word. Rowan unfolded it. His stomach dropped. It was a deed, all right, stamped, dated 6 months ago, signed by a name he didn't recognize, some clerk in town, probably. And at the bottom, in careful handwriting, Clara Whitlock. This is a forgery, he said. No, it's not. Where'd you get it? Bought it. From who? Man in town. Said the estate was abandoned. Said I could have it for $200. 200. Rowan bit off the curse. You got swindled. I got a roof over my son's head. A roof that isn't yours. It is now. She crossed her arms. I've been here 4 months. Fixed the place up, paid taxes. That makes it mine. Paid taxes with what money? Her jaw tightened. That's none of your business. It is if you're squatting on my land. I'm not squatting. I'm living. There's a difference. Rowan rubbed his face. This was a mess. A legal mess, probably. And those took time and money to untangle. He didn't have patience for either. Look, he said, I'm selling this place. Got a buyer lined up. So whatever arrangement you've got, it ends now. Pack your things. I'll give you a week. No. No? I'm not leaving. Her voice was flat, final. My son's sick. Winter's coming. You throw us out, he dies. That's not my problem. Then I'll make it your problem. Rowan's temper flared. You think that gun scares me? You think I won't? Won't what? She stepped closer. Drag a sick child out into the snow? Shoot a woman who's done nothing but try to survive? Go ahead. Let's see what kind of man you are. Her eyes were hard, daring him. Rowan wanted to yell, wanted to grab her by the shoulders and shake some sense into her. But he didn't. Because somewhere under the anger, he recognized the look on her face, desperation, the kind that made people do stupid, reckless things. He'd worn that look once, a long time ago. I'm not a monster, he said quietly. Then prove it. Leave us alone. I can't. Why not? Because it's mine. The words came out harsher than he meant. Because I need to sell it. Because I don't owe you a damn thing. She flinched, just barely. Then her expression hardened again. Fine, she said. Then we'll fight it in court. You don't have money for a lawyer. I'll find it. You can't even afford medicine for your kid. That hit home. He saw it in the way her shoulders stiffened, the way her mouth pressed into a thin line. But she didn't back down. Get off my porch, she said. Your porch. Now. Rowan stared at her. Then he turned and walked down the steps, anger and frustration burning in his chest. He untied his horse, swung into the saddle, and looked back at the house. She was still standing there, watching, waiting. "This isn't over," he called. "I know," she said. He rode off. Rowan didn't go far, just into town. A cluster of buildings clinging to the edge of the frontier like they were afraid the prairie would swallow them whole. The saloon, the general store, the land office. He tied his horse outside the latter and went in. The clerk looked up from his ledger, a wiry man with spectacles and ink-stained fingers. "Help you?" "Need to see the deed records for Blackwood Estate." The clerk blinked. "The Hale place. That's the one. Thought that was sold." "It wasn't." The clerk pushed his glasses up. "Give me a minute." He disappeared into the back room. Rowan waited, tapping his fingers on the counter. When the clerk returned, he was carrying a dusty ledger and a frown. "Got a problem," the clerk said. "What kind of problem?" "2 deeds on file. One in your name, one in the name of a Clara Whitlock." Rowan's hands curled into fists. "How is that possible?" "Looks like someone filed hers 6 months ago, claimed the property was abandoned." "It was my property. Still is." "Maybe, but she paid the back taxes. That gives her a claim." "A fraudulent claim." The clerk shrugged. "That's for a judge to decide. You want to file a dispute?" "How long does that take?" "Couple months. Maybe more if the circuit judge is delayed." "I don't have months." "Then I don't know what to tell you." Rowan bit back a curse. He turned and walked out, slamming the door behind him. He rode back to the estate as the sun was setting. The house looked different in the fading light, less like a ruin and more like a fortress. Smoke still rose from the chimney. A lamp glowed in the upstairs window. Rowan dismounted and stood in the yard, staring up at the light. She was still there, still defiant, still impossible. He should leave. Ride back to town, find a hotel, let the lawyers sort it out. That was the smart thing to do. But the smart thing had never been his strong suit. He walked up to the porch and knocked. No answer. He knocked again, louder. The door opened a crack. Clara stood there, the rifle in her hands again. "What do you want?" "To talk." "We already talked." "Not like this. No guns, no threats, just talk." She hesitated. Then she opened the door wider. "You've got 5 minutes." Rowan stepped inside. The warmth hit him again, along with the smell of soup, thin but real. Clara shut the door and leaned the rifle against the wall. She didn't sit. "Say what you came to say," she said. Rowan looked around the room, at the makeshift repairs, the careful arrangements, the signs of someone trying to build a life out of nothing. "You really paid $200 for this place?" he asked. "Every cent I had." "To a con man?" "I didn't know that." "You should have checked." Her eyes flashed. "I did check. Went to the land office. Clerk said it was legal." "Which clerk?" "Don't remember his name. Older man, bald." Rowan swore under his breath. That wasn't the clerk he'd just spoken to. Someone else. Someone who'd taken her money and run. "He lied to you," Rowan said. "Obviously. So you know you don't have a legal claim." "I know I'm not leaving." She crossed her arms. "You want this place? You'll have to drag me out." "I don't want to drag anyone out." "Then what do you want?" "I want to sell it. Move on." "To where?" "Anywhere but here." "Why?" The question caught him off guard. He stared at her, trying to find an answer that didn't sound like weakness. "Because there's nothing left for me here," he said finally. "Looks like there's a house, land, a future, if you wanted it." "I don't." "Why not?" "That's none of your business." "It is if you're trying to take mine." Rowan's temper flared again. "It's not yours. It never was. You bought a lie. And you're selling a memory." Her voice was sharp. "You don't care about this place. You just want it gone. So why does it matter who lives here?" "Because it's mine." "Then act like it. Stay. Fix it up. Make it something." "I tried that once." The words came out before he could stop them. "Didn't work." Clara's expression softened, just a fraction. "What happened?" Rowan looked away. "My father died here. My brother. I couldn't stay after that." So you ran. I left. Same thing. He didn't answer. Clara sighed. Look, I'm sorry about your family. I am. But I've got a son upstairs who's barely holding on. I've got nowhere else to go. So unless you're planning to shoot me, I'm staying. I'm not going to shoot you. Then we're at a stalemate. Rowan rubbed his face. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. He was supposed to show up, sign some papers, and leave, not get tangled up in someone else's fight. But here he was. Tangled. How sick is he? Rowan asked quietly. Clara's mask slipped. Just for a second. Bad. Fever won't break. Cough's getting worse. I've tried everything I know, but you're not a doctor. No. There's a doctor in town. I can't afford him. I can. She looked at him sharply. Why would you do that? Because I'm not a monster. He met her eyes. And because if the kid dies, it'll be on my conscience. You don't owe us anything. I know. They stood there in silence. The fire crackled. Upstairs, the boy coughed. Let me help, Rowan said. Clara stared at him, searching for the trick, the angle, the lie. She didn't find one. Fine, she said finally, but this doesn't mean I'm leaving. I know. And it doesn't mean I trust you. Didn't expect you to. She nodded slowly. Then she turned and headed for the stairs. I'll get Thomas ready. You bring the doctor here. I'm not taking him out in the cold. Rowan watched her go. Then he walked out into the night, climbed onto his horse, and rode back toward town. Behind him, the house stood silent, waiting. And for the first time in 5 years, Rowan Hale didn't ride away. The doctor came at dawn. He was older than Rowan expected, gray-haired, with hands that trembled slightly when he climbed down from his buggy. But his eyes were sharp, and he didn't waste time with questions. Upstairs? He asked. Yes, Clara said from the doorway. She'd been awake all night. Rowan could see it in the dark circles under her eyes, the way she gripped the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping her upright. The doctor nodded and grabbed his bag. Clara led him up the stairs without looking back at Rowan, who stood in the yard feeling useless and out of place. He'd spent the night in the barn. It wasn't warm, but it was shelter, and he'd slept in worse. The horse had been grateful for the company, at least. Rowan had brushed him down, checked his hooves, done all the small tasks that kept his hands busy and his mind from wandering to places he didn't want it to go. Now he waited. The sun climbed higher, burning off the frost. Inside the house, he could hear footsteps, low voices, the boy coughing. An hour passed, then another. Finally, the door opened. The doctor came out, wiping his hands on a cloth. Clara followed, her face pale. Well? Rowan asked. The doctor looked at him, then at Clara. Pneumonia. Advanced. The boy needs rest, warmth, and medicine. Lots of it. What kind of medicine? Sulfur powder, camphor, willow bark for the fever. I've got some in my bag, but not enough for a full course of treatment. How much do you need? 3 weeks' worth, at least, maybe 4. And the cost? The doctor named a figure that made Clara's face go even paler. Rowan didn't flinch. I'll pay it, he said. Rowan, Clara started. I'll pay it, he repeated, whatever he needs. The doctor glanced between them, clearly trying to work out the relationship. He didn't ask, just nodded. I'll send word to the pharmacy in town. They'll prepare the order. You can pick it up tomorrow. I'll get it today. Today's Sunday. They're closed. Then I'll knock until they open. The doctor's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Persistent, aren't you? When I need to be. All right, I'll write you a note. Give it to the pharmacist. He'll grumble, but he'll do it. The doctor pulled out a small notebook and scribbled something down, then tore off the page and handed it to Rowan. Keep the boy warm. No cold air. No excitement. And for heaven's sake, get some food into him. He's half starved. Clara's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. The doctor tipped his hat. I'll check back in 3 days. Send word if he gets worse. How much do I owe you? Rowan asked. $5 for the visit. 10 if you want me to come back. Rowan pulled out his wallet and handed over 15. For the next visit, too. The doctor pocketed the money and climbed into his buggy. As he drove away, Clara turned to Rowan. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Yeah, I did. Why? Already told you. I'm not a monster. Most people would have left us to figure it out ourselves. I'm not most people. She studied him for a long moment. Then she sighed. Thank you. It was the first time she'd said it without sarcasm. Rowan didn't know what to do with that, so he just nodded. I'll get the medicine, he said. You stay with the boy. I don't need you to... I know, but I'm doing it anyway. He walked to the barn, saddled his horse, and rode off before she could argue. The pharmacist was not happy to be dragged out of his Sunday breakfast. He scowled at Rowan through the cracked door, read the doctor's note, and scowled harder. This is a lot of medicine, he said. Can you fill it or not? I can, but it'll take time, and it'll cost you. How much? The pharmacist named a price. Rowan paid it without blinking. The man's scowl softened into something resembling respect. Give me an hour, he said. Rowan waited outside, leaning against the storefront. The town was quiet. Too quiet. Most folks were at church, probably, singing hymns and pretending the world wasn't as hard as it was. He'd stopped believing in that kind of comfort a long time ago. The street was empty except for a stray dog nosing through garbage behind the general store. Rowan watched it for a while, thinking about nothing and everything. About the house. About Clara's face when the doctor named the price. About the way she'd looked at him when he said he'd pay. Like she didn't know whether to trust him or shoot him. Fair enough. He didn't know either. When the pharmacist finally emerged with a wrapped bundle, Rowan took it and headed back to the estate. The ride felt longer than it should have. The land stretched out around him, brown and barren, waiting for winter to finish what autumn had started. Clara met him at the door. She didn't say anything, just took the bundle and disappeared upstairs. Rowan stood in the front room listening to the creak of floorboards above, the murmur of her voice as she talked to the boy. He should leave. He'd done what he came to do. The kid had medicine. The doctor would check back. Clara could handle the rest. But he didn't leave. Instead, he walked outside and started examining the porch. The boards were worse than he'd thought, rotted through in places, sagging in others. If someone stepped wrong, they'd go straight through. He went to the barn, found some tools buried under years of dust and cobwebs, and got to work. The first board came up easy. The second fought him. The third crumbled in his hands like ash. He cursed under his breath and kept going. 2 hours later, Clara came down and found him replacing a section of railing. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Fixing the porch." "Why?" "Because it's broken." That's not an answer. Rowan straightened, wiping sweat from his forehead despite the cold. "You want a better one? Fine. If I'm stuck here waiting for lawyers to sort out this mess, I might as well make sure the place doesn't collapse on itself." "You're staying? For now?" Her expression was unreadable. "Where?" "Barn." "That's not... It's fine. It's freezing." "I've slept in worse." She crossed her arms. "You're being ridiculous." "Probably. There's a room downstairs. Used to be a study or something. It's got a fireplace." "You offering me a room in my own house?" Her mouth twitched, almost a smile. Almost. "Consider it rent. For the medicine." "I don't need rent." "Well, I don't need charity. So take the room or don't. I don't care." She turned and went back inside. Rowan stared after her, hammer still in his hand. Stubborn woman. He went back to work. That night, he took the room. It was small, barely big enough for a cot and a chair, but it had 4 walls and a fireplace that actually worked. Claire had left blankets folded on the cot, along with a plate of bread and soup. He ate in silence, staring at the fire. The soup was thin, but hot. The bread was hard, but edible. Upstairs, he could hear her moving around. The boy coughed, but it sounded weaker. Maybe the medicine was helping. Maybe. He finished the soup and stretched out on the cot. The mattress was thin, the springs broken, but it beat the barn. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Couldn't. His mind kept circling back to the house, to the repairs it needed, the land that had gone wild, the weight of everything his father had built and then lost. He'd spent 5 years running from this place, and now he was back, sleeping under its roof, fixing its porch. What the hell was he doing? Musen. The next morning, Claire was waiting for him in the kitchen. She had coffee, weak but hot, and more bread. She set a cup in front of him without a word. Thanks, he said. She nodded and sat across from him, her own cup cradled in both hands. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't comfortable exactly, but it wasn't hostile either, just quiet. How's the boy? Rowan asked finally. Better. Fever broke during the night. That's good. Yeah. Another silence. Clara stared into her coffee like it held answers she couldn't find anywhere else. You don't have to stay, she said quietly. I know. So why are you? Rowan considered lying, considered saying something easy, something that wouldn't dig too deep. But he was tired of lying, to her, to himself. Because I don't know what else to do, he said. She looked up at him. No judgment in her eyes. Just understanding. Yeah, she said. I get that. They finished their coffee in silence. Over the next week, they settled into an uneasy routine. Rowan worked on the house during the day, fixing what could be fixed, tearing down what couldn't. Clara tended to Thomas and managed the small things that kept them fed and warm. They didn't talk much, didn't need to. But the tension was always there, simmering, waiting. Rowan replaced half the porch boards in 3 days, fixed the barn roof in 2 more, started on the shutters after that. Every night, Clara left him food. Every morning, they had coffee together. And slowly, without either of them noticing, the walls between them started to crack. On the 5th day, Thomas came downstairs for the first time. He was still pale, still weak, but his eyes were bright. Clara held his hand as he shuffled into the kitchen and sat at the table. Morning, Rowan said. The boy stared at him. Are you the man who owns the house? Thomas, Clara said sharply. It's all right. Rowan set down his coffee. Yeah, I am. Mama says we might have to leave. Thomas? Are we? Rowan looked at Clara. She was avoiding his eyes, her jaw tight. I don't know yet, Rowan said honestly. I don't want to leave, Thomas said. I like it here. Why? The boy shrugged. It's quiet. And there's space. And Mama smiles more. Clara's face went red. That's enough. Go back upstairs. But now. Thomas shuffled off, coughing once. Clara waited until she heard the bedroom door close before she spoke. I'm sorry, she said. For what? For him asking questions. He's a kid. Kids ask questions. He shouldn't have. Clara. Rowan waited until she looked at him. It's fine. She took a shaky breath. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. Doing what? Pretending everything's going to work out. Pretending we're safe here. You are safe. For how long? Until the lawyers show up? Until someone realizes the deed's fake? Until... Stop. I can't. I can't stop thinking about what happens next, about what happens if we lose. Rowan stood and walked around the table. He pulled out the chair next to her and sat. Listen to me, he said. I know you're scared. I know you've been running for a long time, but you're not running anymore. You're here, and I'm here, and we're going to figure this out. How? I don't know yet, but we will. She shook her head. You're too stubborn for your own good. So are you. She almost smiled. Then the moment broke and she wiped her eyes. I should check on Thomas. Yeah. She stood and walked to the stairs. Halfway up, she stopped and looked back. Thank you, she said, for staying. You already thanked me. I know, but I mean it this time. She disappeared upstairs. Rowan sat alone in the kitchen, staring at his cold coffee. It came to a head on the 8th day. Rowan was in the barn, chopping wood for the fireplace, when Clara appeared in the doorway. Her face was tight, angry. We need to talk, she said. He set down the axe. About? This. She gestured at the house, the land, the space between them. Whatever this is. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me what happens next. You said you were selling. Are you still? I don't know. That's not good enough. It's the truth. The truth is useless if it doesn't give me answers. Her voice was rising now, frustration bleeding through. I need to know if I'm staying or going, if I'm safe or if I need to start running again. Again? She froze, realized what she'd said. Forget it, she muttered, turning away. No. Rowan crossed the barn in 3 strides and caught her arm. What did you mean again? Let go. Tell me. She yanked her arm free, eyes flashing. You want the truth? Fine. I'm running from my husband. Ex-husband. He's dead, but his family isn't, and they want Thomas. They think I'm unfit. They think they can take him and raise him better. So I ran. Bought a fake deed because I was desperate and stupid, and now I'm here, hoping to hell they don't find me. Rowan stared at her. They're looking for you? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. And if they find you? They'll take him, and I'll never see him again. Her voice cracked on the last word. She turned away, shoulders shaking. Rowan didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to fix this, but he knew one thing. They won't take him, he said. Clara looked back at him, tears on her face. You can't promise that. Yeah, I can. How? Because I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you. Rowan, I mean it. You stay. I'll deal with the lawyers. I'll deal with your in-laws if they show up, but you stay. Why would you do that? Because someone should have done it for me. The words came out rough, raw. When my family fell apart, no one stayed, no one fought. They all just left, and I'm not doing that to you. Clara stared at him, searching his face for the lie, for the catch. She didn't find one. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Okay. She wiped her eyes. But I'm not a charity case. If I'm staying, I'm working, fixing this place up, making it livable. Deal. And you stop sleeping in that freezing room. There's another bed upstairs. You can take it. I'm fine where I am. You're stubborn. So are you. She almost smiled. Then the moment broke and she turned back toward the house, but she paused at the door. My husband, she said quietly. He wasn't a good man. He drank. He hit. And when I finally left, his family blamed me. Said I drove him to it. Said I was the problem. You weren't. How do you know? Because I've seen men like that. And I've seen women like you. And you're a survivor. That's not a problem. That's strength. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded and went inside. Rowan stood in the barn, breathing hard. His hands were shaking. Not from the cold. From something else. Anger. At a dead man he'd never met. At a family who'd driven her to this. At a world that made women choose between safety and their children. He picked up the axe and went back to work. The wood split clean under the blade. 3 days later, the rider came. Rowan saw him first. A man on a black horse, riding hard toward the estate. He set down the hammer he'd been using to fix the barn roof and climbed down the ladder. Clara was in the garden, pulling up the last of the dead plants. She saw the rider too and went pale. Get inside, Rowan said. Who is he? Don't know, but get inside anyway. She didn't argue, just scooped up Thomas, who'd been playing in the dirt, and ran for the house. Rowan walked into the yard, hands loose at his sides. The rider pulled up 20 feet away and dismounted. He was younger than Rowan expected. Mid-30s, clean-shaven, with expensive clothes and a pistol strapped to his hip. His boots were polished. His coat was new. He looked like money. Can I help you? Rowan asked. The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. I'm looking for Clara Whitlock. Who's asking? My name's James Whitlock. I'm her brother-in-law. Rowan's blood went cold. She's not here. That's funny, because I saw her run into the house not 2 minutes ago. You saw wrong. James's smile widened. I don't think I did. See, I've been looking for Clara for months. Heard she bought some property out here under a fake name. Thought I'd come check it out. This is private property. Is it? Because last I checked, this place belonged to a dead man. Name of Hale. You him? Son of... Ah, so you're the one who abandoned it. James looked around, taking in the repairs. Looks like you're trying to fix that mistake. Little late, don't you think? State your business or get off my land. Your land, right, James laughed. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to talk to Clara, make sure she and the boy are all right. They're fine. I'll be the judge of that. He started toward the house. Rowan stepped in front of him. "You're not going in there," Rowan said. James stopped. His hand dropped to his pistol. "You really want to do this?" "If I have to." "You don't even know her. Why do you care?" "Because she asked me to." James studied him. Then he shook his head. "You're making a mistake. That woman is unstable, unfit. She can't take care of that boy. She's been doing fine so far. In a falling down house with no money? That's not fine. That's desperation. Better than whatever you're offering. You have no idea what we're offering. The boy would have everything: education, opportunity, a real future. He's got a future here. With what? A broken estate and a mother who ran away in the middle of the night? She ran because she had to. Did she tell you that? Did she tell you what really happened?" Rowan's jaw tightened. "I know enough." "I doubt it." James took a step closer. "My brother was a difficult man, I'll grant you that. But Clara wasn't innocent. She pushed him, provoked him. And when he finally snapped, she used it as an excuse to take the boy and disappear." "That's a lie." "Is it? Or is that just what she told you?" Rowan wanted to hit him, wanted to wipe that smug smile off his face, but he kept his hands at his sides. "Leave," he said quietly. "I'll leave. For now. But you tell Clara something for me." "What's that?" "Tell her this isn't over. Tell her the family's not going to stop. And tell her that when we come back, we're bringing a sheriff and a court order." He climbed back onto his horse. Before he rode off, he looked down at Rowan. "You seem like a decent man," James said. "Don't throw your life away on someone who's going to drag you down with her. Get out." James tipped his hat and rode off. Rowan watched until he was out of sight. Then he turned and walked into the house. Clara was standing in the front room, Thomas clutched against her chest. Her face was white. She'd heard everything. "He's going to come back," she whispered. "I know. With a sheriff? With papers? With—" "I know." "We can't fight them. They have money, lawyers, everything." Rowan crossed the room and took her by the shoulders. "Listen to me. We're going to figure this out." "How?" "I don't know yet, but we will." She shook her head. "You don't understand. They'll take him. They'll paint me as some kind of—" "They won't. You can't stop them. Watch me." She stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "Why are you doing this?" "Because it's the right thing to do." "That's not a reason." "It's the only one I've got." Thomas coughed. A small, weak sound. Clara held him tighter, and Rowan saw something break in her eyes. Not defeat. Something worse. Resignation. He couldn't let that happen. "Marry me," he said. Clara blinked. "What?" "Marry me. If you're my wife, they can't touch you, can't take Thomas. The law protects married women, protects their property rights, their children." "That's insane. It's practical." "It's—" She stopped. Her mind was racing. He could see it in her eyes. "That wouldn't work. They'd know it was fake. So we make it real, on paper at least, get a license, find a preacher, make it legal. And then what? We just pretend? We do whatever we have to do to keep them from taking him." She shook her head. "I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking. I'm offering." "Why?" "Because I'm tired of running." The words came out before he could stop them. "I'm tired of watching people lose everything and not doing a damn thing about it. So if this is how I stop running, then fine. I'll do it." Clara stared at him, searching, hoping, afraid to believe. "You're serious," she whispered. "Yeah." "This is crazy." "I know. They'll fight it. They'll say it's fraud. Let them. By the time they get through the courts, it'll be too late. You'll be my wife. Thomas will be my stepson, and they'll have no legal ground to stand on." She looked down at the boy in her arms. He'd fallen asleep, his head resting against her shoulder. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay. Okay." She took a shaky breath. "Let's do it." Rowan nodded. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady. "We'll go into town tomorrow," he said. "Find a preacher, make it legal before they come back. And if they come back before then I'll deal with them." "How?" "However I have to." Clara's grip on Thomas tightened. She looked at Rowan, really looked at him, and for the first time since he'd met her, she smiled. Not much, just a small curve of her mouth, but it was real. "All right," she said. "Then let's fight." They left for town before sunrise. Clara wore the only decent dress she had, dark blue, patched at the elbows, but clean. Thomas stayed behind with a neighbor woman Rowan had paid $5 to watch him for the day. The boy had protested, but Clara promised they'd be back by nightfall. The ride into town was silent. Clara sat beside Rowan on the wagon seat, her hands folded in her lap, her face pale in the gray morning light. She hadn't slept, neither had he. "You can still back out," she said finally. "So can you." "I asked first." Rowan glanced at her. "You having second thoughts? About 100 of them? Want to share?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What if this makes it worse? What if they use it against us? Say we're trying to defraud them." "They can say whatever they want. Won't change the law. The law didn't protect me before. It will now." "You sound sure." "I am." "Why?" "Because I won't let them take him." Clara looked at him, really looked at him. "You barely know us." "I know enough." "Do you?" Rowan didn't answer. He didn't have a good one. The truth was, he didn't know why he was doing this, couldn't explain it in a way that made sense. He just knew that walking away wasn't an option anymore. The town appeared through the morning fog, a handful of buildings clinging to the dirt road like they were afraid to let go. The church sat at the far end, white paint peeling, cross-tilted slightly to the left. Rowan pulled the wagon to a stop outside. Clara didn't move. "You ready?" he asked. "No." "Good. Neither am I." She almost smiled. Then she climbed down from the wagon and walked toward the church. Rowan followed. The preacher was old, ancient really, with a face like worn leather and eyes that had seen too much. He looked them over without speaking, then nodded toward the pews. "Sit," he said. They sat. The preacher shuffled to the altar and pulled out a ledger. "Names? Rowan Hale, Clara Whitlock. Age? 32, 26. Either of you married before?" Clara hesitated. "I'm a widow." "Papers to prove it?" She pulled a folded document from her pocket. The preacher examined it, then handed it back. "All right, you got witnesses?" Rowan looked around the empty church. "No." "Need to. Can you find them?" The preacher sighed. "I'll get the clerk and his wife. Cost you extra." "How much?" $10 total. Rowan handed over the money. The preacher disappeared into the back room. Clara sat rigid on the pew, staring at the altar. "You all right?" Rowan asked. "I don't know." "That's honest." "This feels wrong." "The marriage or the reason for it?" "Both." Rowan leaned back against the pew. "You want to leave? We'll leave. No questions." "And then what? Wait for them to show up with a sheriff?" "If we have to." "That's not a plan. It's better than forcing you into something you don't want." Clara turned to look at him. "What about you? What do you want?" "I want them to leave you alone." "That's not what I asked." Rowan met her eyes. "I don't know what I want anymore. Haven't for a long time." "Then why are you here?" "Because you need help, and I can give it." "That's not enough." "It's all I've got." She stared at him a moment longer, then looked away. "You're a strange man, Rowan Hale." "So I've been told." The preacher returned with two people, an older man with ink-stained fingers and a woman who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. They took their places without enthusiasm. "Let's get this done," the preacher said. The ceremony was brief, no flowers, no music, just words, old words, worn smooth by repetition. Rowan spoke his part. Clara spoke hers. Their voices didn't shake, but they didn't sound certain either. When the preacher asked if anyone objected, the silence stretched long enough to be uncomfortable. Then it was over. "You're married," the preacher said. "Sign here." They signed, the witnesses signed. The preacher blotted the ink and handed Rowan a certificate. "Congratulations," he said, though he didn't sound like he meant it. Clara stared at the paper in Rowan's hands. Her name next to his. Official. Legal. Real. We should go, she said quietly. They walked out into the cold morning. The sky had darkened while they were inside, clouds rolling in from the west, heavy and black. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of coming snow. Storm's coming, Rowan said. We need to get back to Thomas. We will. Come on. They climbed onto the wagon and started back. The wind grew stronger, pushing against them. By the time they reached the edge of town, the first flakes were falling. The storm hit hard and fast. What started as light snow turned into a blizzard within an hour. The wind howled across the prairie, whipping the snow into blinding sheets. Rowan could barely see the road. We need to find shelter, Clara shouted over the wind. Almost there. Rowan! I know the way. Trust me. She didn't argue, just held on as the wagon lurched through the drifts. When the estate finally appeared through the white, Rowan felt relief flood through him. He pulled the wagon up to the house and they ran inside, snow clinging to their clothes. The neighbor woman was waiting with Thomas. She looked terrified. Thank the stars you're back, she said. This storm came out of nowhere. I need to get home before it gets worse. Rowan handed her another $5. Be careful. She left without another word. Clara scooped up Thomas, who was coughing again. How was he? She asked. Fussy, wouldn't eat much. Clara's face tightened. She carried him upstairs. Rowan stood in the front room, listening to the storm tear at the house. The shutters rattled. The roof groaned. Somewhere outside, something crashed. He went to the window and looked out. The barn door had blown open, swinging wildly in the wind. If he didn't secure it, the whole structure might come down. He pulled on his coat and went outside. The wind hit him like a fist. Snow stung his face, blinding him. He fought his way to the barn, grabbed the door, and wrestled it closed. The latch was broken, had been for years. He'd been meaning to fix it. Too late now. He found a piece of rope and tied the door shut, his fingers numb and clumsy. By the time he finished, he couldn't feel his hands. He stumbled back to the house and nearly fell through the door. Clara was there, pulling him inside. You're freezing, she said. I'm fine. You're not. She pushed him toward the fireplace. Sit down. He sat. She disappeared and came back with blankets, wrapping them around his shoulders. Then she knelt and started unlacing his boots. I can do that, he said. Stop talking. His boots came off. His socks were soaked through. She pulled them off too and wrapped his feet in a dry blanket. Better? She asked. Yeah. She sat back on her heels, looking at him. You could have died out there. The barn would have collapsed. So, it's just a barn. It's shelter for the horse, for supplies. We need it. We need you more. The words hung between them. Clara looked away first. I should check on Thomas, she said. She stood and went upstairs. Rowan sat by the fire, feeling slowly return to his hands and feet. The storm raged outside, shaking the house. He thought about the marriage certificate tucked in his coat pocket. Thought about the way Clara had looked at him in the church, like she was trying to figure out if he was real or just another con. He didn't blame her. The storm lasted 3 days. On the first day, they stayed inside, rationing the food Clara had stored. Thomas's cough got worse. Claire gave him medicine, but it didn't seem to help much. She stayed by his side, her face drawn with worry. Rowan kept the fires going and checked the house for leaks. Water was coming in through the roof in 2 places. He put buckets under the drips and made a mental list of repairs. On the second day, part of the porch collapsed. The rotten boards Rowan hadn't gotten to yet gave way under the weight of snow and ice. The crash woke them all. Rowan went to investigate and found a gaping hole where the steps used to be. Can you fix it? Claire asked. Not in this weather. Then how do we get in and out? Carefully. That night they ate the last of the bread. Clara tried to hide her worry, but Rowan saw it in the way she portioned out Thomas's serving. Bigger than hers, smaller than it should be. We'll be fine, he said. Will we? Storm can't last forever. It's lasted this long. On the third day, the wind finally died. The snow stopped. The silence was almost worse than the noise had been. Rowan went outside to assess the damage. The barn was still standing, barely. The porch was a wreck. The fence was down in 3 places, and the road, if you could even call it that, was buried under 4 feet of snow. They weren't going anywhere for a while. He went back inside and found Clara in the kitchen, staring at the empty shelves. "How much food do we have?" he asked. "Enough for maybe 2 days, 3 if we stretch it." "I'll go hunting tomorrow." "In this?" "The snow's stopped. Animals will be out looking for food, too." "What if you get lost?" "I won't." "You don't know that." Clara asked, "I just got you to agree to marry me. I'm not losing you to a snowdrift." The corner of his mouth twitched. "Wouldn't want that." She almost smiled. Then Thomas called from upstairs, and the moment broke. That night they sat by the fire. Thomas was asleep upstairs. The house creaked and settled around them. "Tell me about your family," Clara said suddenly. Rowan looked at her. "Why?" "Because we're married now, and I don't know anything about you." "Not much to tell." "Try anyway." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "My father built this place 30 years ago. Brought my mother out here when it was nothing but grass and sky. They had 2 sons, me and Daniel. What happened to them?" "Mother died when I was 12. Fever. Father never recovered. Started drinking. Got mean. Daniel tried to hold things together, but he trailed off." "But what?" "He couldn't. None of us could. Place started falling apart. Father got worse. Then one winter Daniel went out in a storm to check the livestock. Didn't come back." Clara's face went pale. "He died?" "Froze to death about a mile from the house. We found him 3 days later. And your father?" "Drank himself to death 6 months after that. Left me the estate and a pile of debts." "So you left?" "Yeah." "Why come back?" "Thought I could sell it. Move on, start somewhere new." "And now?" "Now I don't know." Clara stared into the fire. "My husband, my first husband, he wasn't always bad. When we met, he was kind, charming even. But after we married, he changed. Or maybe he just stopped hiding who he really was." "What was he like?" "Angry, drunk, violent when he didn't get his way." She paused. "His family knew. They saw the bruises. But they blamed me. Said I provoked him. Said if I was a better wife, he wouldn't have to—" Her voice broke. Rowan's hands curled into fists. "Where is he now?" "Dead. Fell off his horse one night coming home from the saloon. Broke his neck." "Good." Clara looked at him sharply. "That's a terrible thing to say." "Maybe. But I mean it." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "His family wanted Thomas. Said I couldn't raise him alone. Said I didn't have the means. They were right about that part. I didn't. But I wasn't going to let them take him." "So you ran." "So I ran." They sat in silence. Outside, the wind picked up again. Not a storm, just the night breathing. "You didn't have to marry me," Clara said finally. "You could have just let us stay. Fought them some other way. This was the surest way." "Was it? Or did you just want an excuse to stay?" Rowan looked at her. "What are you asking?" "I'm asking if this is really about protecting us, or if it's about you trying to save something you couldn't save before." The words hit harder than they should have. Rowan stood and walked to the window, staring out at the snow. "Maybe it's both," he said quietly. "That's not fair to us." "I know." "Then why—" "Because I'm tired of losing." He turned to face her. "I'm tired of watching things fall apart and not doing anything about it. I couldn't save my brother, couldn't save my father, couldn't save this place, but maybe I can save you." Clara stood. "I don't need saving, Rowan. I need a partner." "Then that's what I'll be." "You promise?" "Yeah." She searched his face, then she nodded. "All right. Then we do this together. No more secrets, no more running. Together." The word felt strange in his mouth, foreign, but not wrong. Clara held out her hand. Rowan took it. They stood there in the firelight, 2 broken people trying to build something whole. Then the door burst open. Snow and wind exploded into the room. Rowan spun, reaching for his pistol. A figure stumbled through the doorway. James Whitlock, covered in snow, his face red from cold and fury. "Where is she?" he shouted. 2 more men pushed in behind him, both armed, both looking like they meant business. Clara stepped back, her face white. "How did you sit? You think a little snow would stop me?" James shook the ice from his coat. I've been watching this place for 2 days, waiting for the storm to break, and now I'm here to take what's mine. He's not yours, Clara said, her voice shaking. He's family. That makes him mine. Rowan moved between them. Get out, James laughed. Or what? You'll shoot me in front of witnesses? He gestured to the 2 men behind him. That's murder. They'll hang you for it. It's self-defense if you don't leave. This is a legal matter now. I've got a court order. James pulled a paper from his coat. Says Clara Whitlock is an unfit mother. Says the boy is to be remanded to family custody. That's me. She's not Clara Whitlock anymore, Rowan said. James blinked. What? She's Clara Hale. We got married 3 days ago. That paper's worthless. James's face went dark red. You're lying. Rowan pulled the marriage certificate from his pocket and held it up. Read it yourself. James snatched the paper and read. His hands started shaking, not from cold, from rage. This is fraud, he hissed. It's legal. You married her to steal my nephew. I married her to protect her, and him. I'll have this annulled. Try it. By the time you get through the courts, the boy will be old enough to choose for himself. James crumpled the certificate and threw it on the floor. You think you're clever. You think you've won. I think you need to leave. Not without the boy. Yes, without the boy. James's hand dropped to his gun. The 2 men behind him moved forward. Rowan's hand stayed on his own pistol. This is your last chance, James said quietly. Walk away. Let me take him, and I'll forget this ever happened. No. Then you're making a mistake you won't live to regret. James drew. Rowan was faster. His gun cleared leather first, the hammer cocking with a sharp click that echoed in the sudden silence. Don't, Rowan said. James froze, his gun half drawn. The 2 men behind him went still. Clara's voice cut through the tension. Thomas! Rowan's eyes flicked to the stairs. The boy stood at the top, wrapped in a blanket, staring down at the men with wide, frightened eyes. Go back to your room, Clara said, her voice tight. Mama, now! Thomas disappeared. The distraction cost Rowan. James finished his draw and fired. The shot went wide, punching through the wall beside Rowan's head. Rowan fired back. His bullet caught James in the shoulder, spinning him around. James's gun clattered to the floor. The 2 men rushed forward. Rowan swung his pistol toward them, but one tackled him before he could shoot. They went down hard, crashing into the table. Clara screamed. The other man grabbed her. She fought, kicking, clawing, biting, but he was bigger, stronger. He dragged her toward the door. Let her go, Rowan roared. He threw the man off him and lunged for Clara, got his hand on her arm. The man holding her let go and swung a fist that caught Rowan in the jaw. Stars exploded across his vision. James was on his feet again, clutching his bleeding shoulder. Get the boy, he shouted. One of the men started for the stairs. Rowan grabbed his pistol from the floor and fired. The bullet hit the banister, sending splinters flying. The man stopped. Next one goes through your chest, Rowan said. Everything froze. The wind howled outside. Blood dripped from James's shoulder onto the floor. This isn't over, James said through gritted teeth. Yeah, it is. Get out. James looked at Clara, at Rowan, at the gun pointed at his men. We'll be back, he said, with the law. And when we come, you won't be able to stop us. He stumbled toward the door, his men following. They disappeared into the night. Rowan slammed the door and threw the bolt. Then his legs gave out and he sank to the floor, gun still in his hand. Clara dropped beside him. Are you hit? No. You? No. They stared at each other, both shaking. Upstairs, Thomas was crying. It's not over, Clara whispered. I know. They'll come back. I know. What do we do? Rowan looked at the door, at the broken window, at the blood on the floor. We get ready, he said. Clara went upstairs to calm Thomas while Rowan dragged furniture against the door. His hands were still shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline draining out of his system. He'd shot a man. Not killed him, but close enough. The blood on the floor was already drying, turning dark against the wood. He'd have to clean that later. Right now he needed to think. James would be back. That wasn't a threat. It was a promise. And next time, He'd bring more than 2 hired men. He'd bring the law, or something that looked like it. Out here on the frontier, the line between legal and illegal was thin as paper and twice as easy to tear. Rowan checked his pistol. 3 rounds left. He had more ammunition in his saddlebag, but not much. Maybe 20 rounds total. Not enough for a siege. He walked to the window and looked out. The snow had stopped again, but the night was black as pitch. If James and his men were still out there watching, Rowan couldn't see them. Clara came back down. Her face was pale but composed. "He's asleep," she said. "Finally." "Good. Rowan, we can't stay here." "Where would we go?" "Anywhere. Town. Another county. Canada, if we have to. Running won't solve this. Neither will dying. I'm not planning on dying. You shot a man. His men saw it. They'll twist it. Make you the aggressor. He drew first. You think that matters? They've got money, influence. We've got a marriage certificate and a house that's falling apart." Rowan turned to face her. "You want to run? Go. Take Thomas. I'll stay here and slow them down." "That's not what I'm saying." "Then what are you saying?" "I'm saying we need help. We can't do this alone." "Who's going to help us? The sheriff? He's probably in James's pocket already." "Not the sheriff. People. Neighbors. Someone who'll stand witness to what happened here." Rowan shook his head. "There are no neighbors. Not close enough to matter." "Then we make them matter. We go to town, tell everyone what happened, make it public, make it loud enough that James can't just sweep it away." "That's a risk. Everything's a risk now." Rowan looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't the same woman who'd pointed a rifle at him 2 weeks ago. That woman had been desperate, cornered, ready to fight but expecting to lose. This woman was different, harder, sharper, like she'd found something inside herself she didn't know was there. "All right," he said. "We go to town, but we do it my way." "What's your way?" "We don't ask for help. We demand justice." Clara's mouth curved slightly. "I can work with that. They didn't sleep. Couldn't." Every sound outside made them both reach for weapons. Every creak of the house settling sent Rowan's heart racing. By the time dawn broke, they were both exhausted and wired at the same time. Rowan cleaned the blood off the floor while Clara made what passed for breakfast, weak coffee and the last of the bread. Thomas came downstairs coughing, his face still flushed with fever, despite the medicine. "Where are we going?" the boy asked. "Town," Clara said. "We need to talk to some people." "About the men who came?" She hesitated. "Yes. Are they coming back?" "I don't know, sweetheart. I hope they don't." Thomas took a bite of bread, chewed slowly. "I don't like them." "Neither do I," Rowan said. They finished eating in silence. Then Rowan loaded the wagon with Thomas bundled in blankets, Clara beside him with the rifle across her lap. The road was still buried in snow, but Rowan had strapped boards to the wagon wheels to help them cut through the drifts. The sky was gray and heavy, threatening more snow. The wind cut through their coats like knives, but they kept moving. It took 3 hours to reach town. By the time they arrived, Rowan's arms ached from fighting the rains, and Clara's face was red from cold. Thomas had coughed the whole way, but he was awake and alert, watching everything with wide eyes. The town was quiet. Too quiet. Most folks were still digging out from the storm. But a few people were on the street, and they stopped to stare as the wagon rolled past. Rowan could feel their eyes, could feel the questions forming. Good. Let them wonder. He pulled up in front of the sheriff's office. Clara looked at him. "You sure about this?" she asked. "No, but we're doing it anyway." They climbed down. Rowan helped Thomas out of the wagon and carried him inside. The sheriff was at his desk, a middle-aged man with a gut that hung over his belt, and eyes that had seen too much and cared too little. "Help you?" he asked without looking up. "I need to report an attack," Rowan said. That got his attention. The sheriff looked up, his gaze moving from Rowan to Clara to the boy. "What kind of attack?" 3 men broke into my house last night. One of them drew a gun. I shot him in self-defense." The sheriff leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking under his weight. "That's so. These men have names. James Whitlock. Don't know the other 2. The sheriff's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Recognition, maybe calculation. Whitlock, huh? He file a complaint? Don't know, did he? Not yet, but the day's young. The sheriff stood and walked around his desk. He was taller than Rowan expected, broader too. You got witnesses? My wife. And anyone else? The boy was upstairs. He heard it. Boy's what, 6, 7? That won't hold up. Then take my word. The sheriff snorted. Your word against a Whitlock? You're new around here, aren't you? I grew up here, left 5 years ago, came back to sell my father's estate. Hale place? That's right. Heard someone was squatting there. That her? He nodded at Clara. She's my wife, Rowan said flatly. And she's not squatting, she's living. Uh-huh. Ma. And how long you two been married? 4 days? The sheriff's eyebrows went up. 4 days, right. And before that? Before that's none of your business. It is if you're trying to use marriage to dodge a custody claim. Rowan's jaw tightened. There's no law against getting married. There's laws against fraud. Show me the statute. The sheriff studied him. Then he smiled, cold and thin. You're in over your head, son. Whitlocks own half this county. They want that boy, they'll get him. Marriage or no marriage. Not if I have anything to say about it. You don't. Then I'll make it so I do. The sheriff's smile faded. That a threat? It's a promise. For a long moment, they stared at each other. The room felt smaller, hotter. Thomas shifted in Clara's arms, coughing softly. Then Clara stepped forward. Sheriff, she said quietly, my husband died 2 years ago. His family blamed me, said I wasn't fit to raise my son. They tried to take him through the courts, but I ran before they could. I bought what I thought was legal property and tried to start over. Then Mr. Hale returned and told me the deed was fake. Instead of throwing us out, he helped us, married me to protect Thomas. Last night, James Whitlock and 2 armed men broke into our home and tried to take my son by force. Mr. Hale defended us. That's the truth. You can believe it or not, but it's the truth. The sheriff looked at her, then at Thomas, who was clinging to her skirt, then at Rowan. Even if I believe you, the sheriff said, it doesn't change the facts. Whitlocks have money, lawyers, connections. You've got nothing. We've got the law, Rowan said. The law doesn't care about you. Then I'll make it care. How? By making enough noise that someone has to listen. The sheriff shook his head. You're a fool. Probably, but I'm a fool who's not backing down. The sheriff sighed and sat back down at his desk. He pulled out a form, dipped his pen in ink. I'll file your report, but don't expect it to go anywhere. And if Whitlock comes back with a complaint of his own, I'll have to arrest you. For what? Assault, attempted murder, whatever he says. You'd take his word over mine? I'd take the word of the man who's not bleeding. Rowan wanted to argue, wanted to grab the sheriff by his collar and shake some sense into him, but Clara touched his arm. Let's go, she said softly. Rowan nodded. They turned and walked out. On the street, people were watching. Word had spread fast. It always did in small towns. Rowan could see it in their faces. Curiosity, judgment, some sympathy, but not much. A woman stood near the general store, arms crossed. She was older, maybe 50, with gray hair pulled back tight and a face that had forgotten how to smile. That true what they're saying? She called out. About Whitlock? Rowan stopped. Depends on what they're saying. That he tried to take your boy. My stepson. And yes, the woman's face hardened. Figures. Men like that always think they can take what they want. Another voice joined in. A man this time, standing in the doorway of the blacksmith shop. I worked for James Whitlock once. Promised me fair wages. Paid me half and told me to be grateful. He bought my land for nothing, someone else said. Said it was that or lose it to taxes. The voices piled up. Grievances, complaints. Stories of the Whitlock family using money and influence to crush anyone who got in their way. Rowan listened. So did Clara, and slowly something shifted in the air, something that felt like possibility. What now? Clara asked quietly. Now we make noise. How? The newspaper. There was a small press office at the end of the street, barely more than a shack, but it printed a weekly paper that everyone read. Rowan started toward it, Clara and Thomas following. The editor was a thin man with ink-stained fingers and a skeptical expression. He looked up when they entered, his eyes narrowing behind wire-rimmed spectacles. "Help you?" he asked. "I want to place a notice," Rowan said. "What kind?" "Public statement about what happened last night." The editor set down his pen carefully. "I don't print gossip." "This isn't gossip, it's fact. James Whitlock and 2 armed men broke into my home and tried to kidnap my stepson. I'm making it public so everyone knows what kind of man he is." "That's a serious accusation." "It's the truth." "Can you prove it?" "I've got a bullet hole in my wall and blood on my floor. I've got witnesses who saw them right up. And I've got a shoulder wound on James Whitlock that matches the bullet from my gun." The editor leaned back in his chair. "Look, I sympathize, I do. But if I print that, Whitlock will sue me into the ground. I can't afford that." "What if I pay you?" "How much?" "Name your price." The editor hesitated, his fingers drumming on the desk. $50? Rowan pulled out his wallet and counted out the money. It was most of what he had left, but he laid it on the desk without flinching. The editor stared at it. "You're serious," he said. "Dead serious. This is going to cause problems." "Good. I want problems." The editor took the money slowly, like it might burn his fingers. Then he sighed. "All right, dictate it to me. I'll run it in tomorrow's edition." Rowan did. He kept it simple. No embellishment, just the facts. James Whitlock had entered the Hale estate without permission, had threatened to take Thomas Whitlock, now Thomas Hale, by force, had drawn a weapon. Rowan had defended his family. Anyone with information or who wanted to testify could contact him at the Hale estate. When he finished, the editor read it back. "You sure about this? Print it. Your funeral." "Hopefully not." They left the press office and walked back to the wagon. The crowd on the street had grown, 20 people now, maybe more. One of them, the older woman from before, stepped forward. "Is it true?" she asked. "All of it?" Clara nodded. "Every word." "Then you're braver than most. Whitlocks don't take kindly to being challenged." "I don't care what they take kindly to." The woman's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "My sister married a Whitlock. Different branch of the family, but same blood. They treated her like property. When she finally left, they made her life hell, took everything she had. She died broke and broken." "I'm sorry," Clara said. "Don't be sorry, be ready, because they'll come at you with everything they've got." "Let them," Rowan said. The woman looked at him. "You'll need witnesses, people willing to stand up in court and say what kind of men they are." "You do that?" "I would, and I know others who would too." "Why?" "Because someone needs to, and it might as well be now." Rowan felt something loosen in his chest. "Thank you." The woman nodded. "Don't thank me yet. Whitlock won't go down easy." "I know." "Then make sure you're ready." They spent the rest of the day gathering names, people who'd been wronged by the Whitlocks, people who were tired of staying silent. By the time the sun started to set, Clara had 15 signatures on a piece of paper folded into her pocket. The blacksmith, the woman whose sister had died, a farmer who'd lost his land, a widow who'd been cheated out of her inheritance, a shopkeeper who'd been strong-armed into selling goods at half price. Stories, all of them, little wounds that had festered for years. On the ride back to the estate, Thomas fell asleep against Clara's shoulder. She looked at Rowan. "You think it'll be enough?" she asked. "I don't know, but it's more than we had this morning. What if he comes back tonight? Then we'll be ready." "How?" "We've got the rifle, I've got my pistol, and we've got each other." Clara smiled faintly. "That's not much of a plan." "It's the only one we've got."
What? So
Spun. When they reached the estate, Rowan helped Clara carry Thomas inside. The house was cold. The fire had gone out while they were gone. Rowan restarted it while Clara put the boy to bed. She came back down and found Rowan standing at the window, staring out at the dark. "You think they're out there?" she asked. "Maybe." "What are you going to do if they come back?" "Whatever I have to." She moved to stand beside him. For a while they just stood there, watching the night. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It felt almost companionable. I never thanked you, Clara said quietly. For what? For not giving up. For fighting when you didn't have to. You would have done the same. Would I? Yeah, you would have. She looked at him. How do you know? Because you're still here, still fighting. That's not something you fake. Claire's eyes were bright. She opened her mouth to say something, but before she could, a noise outside made them both freeze. Hoofbeats. Multiple horses. Coming fast. Rowan grabbed his pistol and moved to the door. Clara took the rifle. They waited, barely breathing. The horses stopped outside. Footsteps approached the door. Then a knock. Firm. Authoritative. Mr. Hale? A voice called. Not James. Someone else. Rowan cracked the door open, gun ready. A man stood on the porch, young, maybe 30, with a clean-shaven face and a marshal's badge pinned to his coat. Can I help you? Rowan asked. I'm Marshal Garrett. Got word there was trouble out here. Who sent you? Got a telegram from the county seat. Said there was a dispute that needed settling. Rowan's jaw tightened. Did James Whitlock send it? Don't know who sent it. Just know I'm here to investigate. A shooting, kidnapping attempt, trespassing, depends on who's telling the story. Rowan studied the marshal's face. He looked honest enough, but so did most con men. You want my story? Rowan asked. That's why I'm here. Rowan opened the door wider. Then come in. Marshal Garrett listened without interrupting. Didn't take notes, just stood in the front room, arms crossed, face neutral. When Rowan finished, Garrett looked at Clara. That match your account, ma'am? Every word, Clara said. And the boy? Upstairs, asleep. I'll need to talk to him tomorrow. He's 6 years old. I understand, but if this goes to court, his testimony might matter. Clara's face tightened. Fine, but not tonight. He's been through enough. Fair enough. Garrett walked to the blood stain on the floor. He crouched and touched it, rubbing his fingers together. Whitlock get hit bad? Shoulder, Rowan said. He'll live. You a good shot or a bad one? I hit what I aim at. Garrett stood. So you aimed for his shoulder. Didn't want to kill him, just wanted him to stop. That'll help your case, shows restraint. Garrett walked to the door and looked out at the night. I'll be straight with you. Whitlocks have pull. They'll lawyer up. Make this as complicated as possible. Drag it through the courts for months if they can. But if what you're saying is true, and you've got witnesses, you might have a chance. Might? That's the best I can give you. Law's not perfect, especially out here. Rowan nodded slowly. Fair enough. Garrett turned back. I'm staying in town tonight at the hotel. If anything else happens, anything at all, you send word. Understood? Understood. The marshal tipped his hat to Clara. Ma'am. Then he left, his boots heavy on the porch steps. They watched him ride away into the darkness. You trust him? Clara asked. Don't know him well enough to trust him, but he didn't arrest me on sight. That's something. It's not enough. It's a start. 2 days later, the newspaper came out. Rowan's statement was on the front page, boxed and bold. By noon, half the town had read it. By evening, the other half had heard about it. James Whitlock showed up at the sheriff's office that afternoon. Rowan heard about it from the general store clerk when he went to buy supplies. James had been furious, his arm still in a sling, demanding Rowan be arrested for slander and attempted murder. The sheriff had told him to file a formal complaint and take it up with the circuit judge. That night, another knock came at the door. Rowan answered it, pistol in hand. An older man stood on the porch with a doctor's bag. Evening, the man said. I'm Dr. Morrison. Heard there was a sick boy out here. Who told you that? Heard it around town. Thought I'd check in. No charge. Rowan hesitated. Charity made him uncomfortable, but Thomas was still coughing, still struggling. Upstairs, Rowan said. First door on the left. The doctor went up. Clara followed. Rowan waited below, listening to the murmur of voices, the soft sounds of examination. 20 minutes later, the doctor came back down. He's got pneumonia, the doctor said, but it's getting better. Whatever medicine you've been giving him is working. Keep it up. Make sure he stays warm and dry. Gets plenty of rest. He should pull through just fine. Relief flooded through Rowan. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank whoever stood up and made Whitlock's name mud. That boy's a bully. Always has been. Needed someone to call him out. The doctor tipped his hat and left. Clara came downstairs, her eyes wet. He said Thomas is going to be okay, she whispered. I heard. People are helping us, Rowan. People we don't even know. Yeah. Why? Because they're tired of men like Whitlock, and we gave them a reason to fight back. Clara crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him. Rowan froze for a second, surprised. Then slowly, carefully, he put his arms around her and held on. We're going to win this, she said against his chest. Maybe. We are. Rowan didn't argue. He just held her and let himself believe for a moment that she might be right. The court hearing was set for the following week. Marshal Garrett delivered the summons personally. Both Rowan and James were required to appear before the circuit judge to settle the matter of custody, property rights, and the shooting. Rowan spent the days preparing. He went over the list of witnesses again and again, talked to each one, making sure they understood what they'd be asked. Made sure they were willing to face James Whitlock in a courtroom. Most of them were. A few backed out, too scared, too worried about retribution. Rowan didn't blame them, but he still had 11 people willing to testify. 12, if he counted the doctor. The morning of the hearing, Rowan put on the only clean shirt he had, white cotton, slightly frayed at the collar, and helped Clara into the wagon. She wore the blue dress again, the one she'd been married in. Thomas stayed with the neighbor woman. Clara didn't want him in the courtroom, didn't want him to hear the things that would be said. The ride to town felt longer than usual. Clara sat close to him, her hands folded tight in her lap. What if we lose? She asked. We won't. But what if we do? Then we figure something else out. There might not be anything else. Rowan reached over and took her hand. Then we run, you, me, and Thomas. We disappear. Go somewhere they'll never find us. She looked at him. You do that? Yeah. Why? Because you're my wife. He's my son now. That means something. Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. You're a good man, Rowan Hale. Don't know about that. I do. The courthouse was packed. People stood along the walls, crammed into the benches, spilling out into the hallway. Rowan recognized some of them, folks who'd signed the list, folks who'd spoken up in the street, others he didn't know. But they were all there, watching, waiting. James Whitlock sat at the front with 2 lawyers in expensive suits. He looked pale, his arm still in a sling, but his eyes were hard. When he saw Rowan, his mouth twisted into something ugly. The judge entered, a stern-looking man with white hair and a gavel that looked like it had seen 100 cases. He sat, adjusted his spectacles, and looked at both sides. Let's get started, he said. His voice was gravelly, tired. This is the matter of Whitlock versus Hale, custody dispute and assault charges. Mr. Whitlock, your counsel may begin. James's lawyer stood. He was smooth, polished, with a voice that filled the room. He painted Rowan as a violent drifter who'd abandoned his family's estate and returned only to exploit a desperate widow. He called the marriage a fraud, a scheme to steal a child from his rightful family. He made Rowan sound like a monster. Then it was Rowan's turn. He didn't have a lawyer, couldn't afford one, so he stood and spoke for himself. His voice was rough at first, uncertain, but as he talked, it grew stronger. He told the truth. About Clara running from abuse, about James breaking into the house with armed men, about the gunfight, about the marriage. Not a scheme, but protection. I married her because it was the right thing to do, Rowan said, looking directly at the judge. Because no one else would help her. Because that boy deserves a mother who loves him, not a family that sees him as property to claim. The courtroom was silent. The judge looked at James. You got anything to say to that? James stood, his face red. He shot me, Your Honor. Tried to kill me in cold blood. Did you enter his property without permission? I was retrieving my nephew. Answer the question. Did you enter the estate without Mr. Hale's permission? James's jaw worked. Yes, but Did you have legal authority? A court order? A warrant? No, but the boy is family. So is Mrs. Hale now, by marriage, which makes the boy Mr. Hale's legal stepson. The judge looked at the lawyer. You got anything that disputes the validity of the marriage? The lawyer shuffled papers. We're alleging fraud, Your Honor. The marriage occurred under suspicious. Suspicious isn't illegal. Do you have proof of fraud? Not concrete proof, but the timing. Then sit down. The lawyer sat. James looked like he wanted to explode. The judge turned to the crowd. I understand there are witnesses who want to speak. One by one they stood. The older woman whose sister had died, the blacksmith, the farmer, the shopkeeper, the widow. They told their stories about the Whitlocks, about the way they'd used money and power to hurt people, to take what they wanted, to crush anyone who stood in their way. By the time they finished, James looked small, diminished. His lawyers were whispering furiously, but they had nothing. The judge leaned back in his chair and sighed. I've heard enough. Here's my ruling. The room went silent. The marriage between Rowan Hale and Clara Hale is legal and binding. No evidence of fraud has been presented. Thomas Whitlock is now Thomas Hale by law of marriage and adoption. James Whitlock has no legal claim to the boy. James shot to his feet. Your Honor, you can't. Furthermore, the judge continued, his voice hardening, Mr. Whitlock is fined $200 for criminal trespassing and is ordered to stay at least 1 mile from the Hale estate at all times. Any violation of this order will result in immediate arrest. As for the shooting, I find Mr. Hale acted in lawful defense of his home and family. No charges will be filed. The gavel came down with a crack that echoed through the room. Court dismissed. The courtroom erupted. People cheered. James's face went purple with rage, his lawyers trying to calm him down. Clara grabbed Rowan's arm, tears streaming down her face. We won, she whispered. We actually won. Rowan couldn't speak, could barely breathe. He just nodded. Outside, people surrounded them, shaking hands, clapping backs, congratulating them. The older woman pushed through the crowd and hugged Clara. You did it, she said. You beat them. We did it, Clara corrected, all of us. As they climbed into the wagon, Marshal Garrett appeared. Congratulations, he said. That took guts. Thank you, Rowan said. Word of advice? Don't let your guard down. Men like Whitlock don't forget. He might follow the law now, but that doesn't mean he's done. I know. Just be careful. Garrett tipped his hat and walked away. Rowan looked at Clara. You ready to go home? He asked. She smiled. Yeah, let's go home. They rode back to the estate as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Thomas was waiting on the porch with the neighbor woman, and when he saw them, he ran forward. Mama, did we win? Clara scooped him up, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, sweetheart, we won. That night, after Thomas was asleep, Rowan and Clara stood on the porch, looking out at the land. What now? Clara asked. Now we rebuild, Rowan said. Fix this place up. Make it a real home. You think we can? Yeah, I do. She smiled and took his hand. Then let's get started. And for the first time in 5 years, Rowan Hale felt like he'd finally stopped running. The work started the next morning. Rowan was on the roof before sunrise, tearing off the rotted shingles and replacing them with new wood he'd bought in town. His hands were raw by noon, blistered and bleeding, but he didn't stop. Clara worked below, clearing out years of debris from the barn, while Thomas, finally well enough to be outside, picked up small sticks and carried them to a pile. It felt good, purposeful, like building something instead of watching it crumble. By the end of the first week, they'd replaced half the roof and fixed the barn door. The porch was still a mess, but Rowan had plans sketched out on a piece of paper Clara had given him. 2 weeks, maybe 3, and it would be solid again. People from town started showing up. Not many at first, just 1 or 2. The blacksmith came with tools he said he didn't need anymore. The widow brought preserves and bread. The farmer who'd lost his land to the Whitlocks showed up with lumber. Heard you could use some help, he said. Rowan looked at the wood, then at the man. I can't pay you. Didn't ask you to. Why help then? The farmer shrugged. Because you stood up when the rest of us didn't. Figure that's worth something. He stayed all day helping Rowan frame out the new porch. By evening, the structure was taking shape. rough but solid, the kind of work that would last. Clara brought them water and watched from the doorway, Thomas at her side. "Looks different already," she said. "Getting there," Rowan said. "Think it'll hold?" "Better than before," she smiled. "That's not saying much." He almost laughed. Almost. The farmer wiped sweat from his brow and looked at the frame they'd built. "This is good work. Your father would have been proud." Rowan didn't know what to say to that. His father had been a lot of things, a builder, a dreamer, a drunk. But proud? That wasn't a word Rowan associated with the old man. "Maybe," he said finally. The farmer seemed to understand. He nodded and picked up his coat. "I'll come back tomorrow. Bring my son. Between the three of us, we'll have this done in a week." "You don't have to." "I know. But I'm going to anyway." He left before Rowan could argue. Clara came down the steps and slipped her arm through his. "People like you," she said. "People like what we did." "Same thing." "No, it's not." "Rowan." She turned to face him. "They're helping because they want to, because they see something in you worth helping. Don't push that away." He looked at her, at the determination in her eyes, the strength in the set of her jaw. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just weren't paying attention." He smiled. "Fair enough. Well, 2 weeks after the court hearing, James Whitlock came back. Rowan saw him from the roof, a lone rider on the same black horse, moving slow down the road. No hired men this time. No guns visible. Just James, his arm still in a sling, his face hard as stone. Rowan climbed down and called to Clara, "Get Thomas inside." "Is it? Now." She didn't argue, just grabbed the boy and disappeared into the house. Rowan walked into the yard, hands empty but ready. His pistol was in the house, but he didn't go for it. Not yet. James pulled his horse to a stop 20 feet away. He didn't dismount. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. The wind kicked up dust between them. "You here to cause trouble?" Rowan asked. "No." "Then what do you want?" James's jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. "I came to see the boy." "The court said you can't come within a mile of this property." "I know what the court said." "Then you're breaking the law." "I just want to see him. Make sure he's all right." "He's fine." "I'll be the judge of that." Rowan's hands curled into fists. "You don't get to judge anything. Not anymore." James's face twisted. "He's my blood. He's my son. You've known him for a month. And in that month, I've done more for him than you ever would have." James flinched like he'd been slapped. His horse shifted beneath him, sensing the tension. "You don't know me." "I know enough. I know you broke into my home. I know you tried to take him by force. I know you lost in court, and you still can't accept it." "Because it's wrong. That boy deserves what? A family that treats him like property? That uses him to settle scores?" Rowan took a step forward. "He deserves a mother who loves him and a home where he's safe. That's all. And if you can't give him that, then you've got no business being here." James opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked past Rowan at the house, at the partially rebuilt porch, at the smoke rising from the chimney, at the new shingles on the roof and the repaired fence and all the signs of life returning to a place that had been dead. "Is he happy?" James asked quietly. The question caught Rowan off guard. "What?" "The boy. Is he happy here?" Rowan thought about Thomas playing in the yard that morning, laughing for the first time in weeks, building forts out of scrap wood and chasing chickens, asking Rowan to teach him how to hammer nails. "Yeah," Rowan said. "He is." James nodded slowly. He looked older somehow, tired, like the fight had gone out of him. "My brother, Thomas's father, he wasn't a good man. I knew that. We all did. But he was family, and we protected him anyway, even when we shouldn't have." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need you to understand. We didn't try to take the boy because we hated Clara. We tried to take him because we thought we were doing the right thing, thought we could give him a better life. By dragging him away from his mother? By giving him opportunities, education, money, things she couldn't provide. She provided love. That's more than money can buy." James was quiet for a long moment. The wind picked up again, colder now. Winter was coming back. You really care about them, don't you? James said. Yeah, I do. Even though you barely know them? Knowing someone isn't about time. It's about showing up when it matters. James looked down at his hands on the reins. They were shaking slightly. I can't come back here. Court order says I'll be arrested. That's right. So this is it. Last time I'll see him. Unless he wants to see you when he's older. That'll be his choice. Not mine. Not yours. His. James lifted his head and met Rowan's eyes. For the first time, there was no anger there. Just something that looked like regret. Take care of him, James said. Both of them. I will. And if you don't, if you hurt them, I'll find a way to make you pay, court order or no court order. Rowan met his eyes. Fair enough? James gathered his reins. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. He tossed it to the ground between them. What's that? Rowan asked. Money. For the boy. For his future. It's not much, but it's something. I don't want your money. It's not for you. It's for him. Put it away. Save it. Use it when he needs it. James turned his horse. And Hale? Yeah? You're a better man than I gave you credit for. He rode away before Rowan could respond. Rowan watched until he disappeared over the horizon, then picked up the envelope. Inside was $200, more money than Rowan had seen in months. Clara came out of the house, Thomas behind her. Is he gone? She asked. Yeah. What did he want? To see Thomas. Make sure he was all right. And? I told him he was. Rowan held up the envelope. He left this for Thomas, for his future. Clara stared at the money. Why? I think he finally accepted that he lost, and this is his way of making peace with it. You think he'll come back? No, I think he's done. How do you know? Because he looked like a man who'd lost something, and he knew it. Clara took his hand. Thank you. For what? For protecting us. Again. That's what family does. She smiled. Yeah, it is. The months that followed were hard but good. The kind of hard that came from work, not fear. From building instead of running. Rowan finished the porch in 3 weeks with help from the farmer and his son. The roof took longer. 6 weeks of climbing up and down ladders, replacing shingles, patching holes, reinforcing beams. But when it was done, it was solid. The first big rain came in early spring, and not a single drop leaked through. Clara planted a garden, pulling up the dead plants and replacing them with seeds the widow had given her. Tomatoes, beans, squash, carrots. She worked the soil until her hands were as rough as Rowan's, her back aching at the end of each day. Thomas got stronger. His cough faded completely by April. Color came back to his face. He started running again, playing in the yard, helping with small tasks around the farm. He started calling Rowan Pa without being asked, and the first time it happened, Rowan had to turn away so the boy wouldn't see him tear up. The estate started to look like something worth keeping. The fence got rebuilt, section by section. The barn got a new roof and fresh hay. The chicken coop got repaired and restocked. The house stopped leaking when it rained, stopped creaking so loudly in the wind. People still came by, not just to help, but to visit, to share news, to bring food. The older woman became a regular, showing up every Sunday with fresh bread and stories about her sister. You remind me of her, she told Clara one afternoon while they sat on the new porch shelling peas. She had your fight, your fire. What happened to her? Clara asked. She gave up, let them break her. The woman's face hardened. But you didn't, and that matters. Clara didn't know what to say to that, so she just hugged her. The woman stiffened for a moment, then hugged back, hard. The blacksmith started teaching Thomas how to work metal. The farmer showed him how to plant seeds in straight rows. The widow taught him his letters and numbers. It took a village, Clara thought, and somehow, without trying, they'd built one. 6 months after the court hearing, a letter arrived. It was addressed to Rowan, written in careful script on expensive paper with a lawyer's seal. He opened it at the kitchen table, Clara watching over his shoulder, her hands still covered in flour from making bread. It was from a lawyer in the city, not one of James's lawyers, someone else. The letter explained that the Whitlock family had decided to drop all claims to Thomas. They acknowledged the court's ruling and wished the Hales well. All legal matters were considered closed. At the bottom, in different handwriting, rougher, more personal, was a single line: "He deserves better than we could give him. J.W." Clara read it twice, her lips moving silently. "Is this real?" "Looks like it. They're really done?" "Yeah, I think they are." She sat down hard in the chair beside him, like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. "We're safe. Actually safe." "We are." Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling, laughing, both at the same time. "I can't believe it. I keep waiting for something else to go wrong." "Nothing's going to go wrong. You don't know that." "No, but I believe it." She grabbed his hand across the table, squeezing so hard it hurt. "Thank you for everything, for not giving up, for fighting, for Clara, for being here when no one else was." Rowan squeezed back. "You would have done the same for me." "I hope so. I know so." That night, they sat on the porch, the new porch, solid and sturdy under their feet, and watched the sun set. Thomas was inside, asleep, finally free from the cough that had plagued him for so long. The land stretched out around them, quiet and still. "You ever think about leaving?" Clara asked. "Used to, all the time." "And now?" "Now I can't imagine being anywhere else." She leaned against his shoulder. "Me neither." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the crickets and the wind in the grass. The night was warm, spring turning into summer. "Rowan?" "Yeah?" "I know this started as a practical thing, a way to protect Thomas." "I know. But it's not just that anymore. Not for me." He turned to look at her. Her face was serious, open, vulnerable in a way he'd never seen before. "Not for me either," he said. "So what is it?" "I don't know. Something real." She smiled. "I can work with real." "Yeah?" "Yeah." He kissed her, soft and careful at first, like he was afraid she might disappear. She kissed him back, her hand coming up to cup his face, and it wasn't careful anymore. It was desperate and grateful and full of everything they'd been through together. When they pulled apart, she was crying again. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing. I'm just happy." "You sure?" "I'm sure." She wiped her eyes. "I didn't think I'd ever be happy again. After everything with my husband, after running, after almost losing Thomas, I thought that was it, that I'd used up all my chances." "You didn't." "No, I didn't, because you gave me another one." "We gave each other one." She kissed him again. "Yeah, we did." By the end of the year, the estate was unrecognizable from what it had been when Rowan first returned. The house had been painted, white with blue trim, Clara's choice. The barn was full of hay and supplies for the coming winter. The garden had produced more food than they could eat, so Clara started selling the surplus in town. Tomatoes, beans, preserves, pickles. She had a regular spot at the market now, and people knew her by name. Thomas started school in September. He was nervous at first, shy around the other children, uncertain in the classroom. But the teacher was kind, and he made friends fast. A boy named Samuel, who lived on a neighboring farm. A girl named Emma, who shared her lunch with him on his first day. He came home every afternoon with stories about what he'd learned, talking a mile a minute while Clara and Rowan listened. About arithmetic and geography and the way frogs breathe through their skin. About games played at recess and books read out loud. Rowan took on work helping other farmers with repairs. Fixing fences, mending roofs, building outbuildings. It wasn't much money, but it was steady, and it gave him a reason to stay connected to the people who'd helped them. Word spread that he was reliable, skilled, honest. More work came, sometimes more than he could handle. Clara started teaching music lessons to children in town. She'd played piano as a girl, before her marriage, and the skill came back easily. The general store had an old upright in the back room, and the owner let her use it on Saturday mornings. Parents paid her in eggs, flour, firewood, chickens, whatever they had. She didn't mind. Money wasn't the point. They weren't rich, probably never would be, but they had enough. And for the first time in a long time, enough felt like plenty. One evening in late autumn, Rowan stood in the yard watching Thomas chase fireflies. The boy was laughing, running in circles with his arms outstretched, trying to catch the light in his hands. Clara came out and stood beside him, wiping her hands on her apron. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "My brother." "Daniel?" "Yeah, I was thinking he would have liked this, seeing the place come back to life, seeing it full of people again. You miss him." "Every day, but it doesn't hurt as much anymore." "Why not?" "Because I'm not running from it. I'm here, dealing with it, building something new instead of trying to forget the old." Clara slipped her hand into his. "You think he'd be proud of you?" "I don't know. Maybe. I think he would." Rowan squeezed her hand. "Thanks." They watched Thomas for a while longer. The fireflies were thick tonight, blinking like stars that had fallen to earth. The boy caught one finally, cupping it gently in his hands, his face lit with wonder as he peered through his fingers at the glow. "I have something to tell you," Clara said quietly. "What?" "I'm pregnant." Rowan froze. The words took a moment to register. "You're what?" "Pregnant. About 3 months." He turned to face her. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Saw the doctor in town last week. He confirmed it." "How long have you known?" "A few weeks. I wanted to be certain before I said anything. Didn't want to get your hopes up if it wasn't real." Rowan didn't know what to say. His mind was racing, trying to process the information, to understand what it meant. Claire's face fell. "You're not happy." "No, I mean, yes, I'm happy. I'm just surprised." "Surprised good or surprised bad?" "Good. Definitely good." He pulled her into his arms. "We're having a baby." "We are." That's incredible." She laughed against his chest. "I was hoping you'd say that." "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I didn't know. This wasn't part of the plan." "Plans change." "Yeah, they do." They stood there holding each other while Thomas ran circles around them, oblivious to everything except the fireflies and the joy of catching light. The baby came in the spring, a girl. Small and loud and perfect in all the ways that mattered. Clara named her Rose, after her mother, who had died when Clara was young. Rowan held her for the first time in the front room of the house, sunlight streaming through the window, and felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. Pure and uncomplicated. Thomas was fascinated by his new sister. He wanted to hold her constantly, to show her everything, to tell her about school and fireflies and all the things he was learning. Clara had to remind him to be gentle, that babies were fragile, but he tried. He really tried. The neighbors came by with gifts, blankets knitted by hand, clothes sewn from scraps of fabric, a cradle the blacksmith had built himself, carved with flowers and vines. The older woman brought a quilt she'd sewn by hand, each square a different pattern, each one representing something: a house, a tree, a family. "For the baby," she said, pressing it into Clara's hands. "And for you, because you're family now. All of you." Clara cried. Again. She'd been crying a lot lately, happy tears, sad tears, exhausted tears, grateful tears. Rowan had stopped trying to keep track. Rose was a good baby. She slept in stretches long enough for Clara to rest, nursed without fussing, seemed content to just watch the world with wide, curious eyes. Rowan took to carrying her around the farm while he worked, tucked into a sling Clara had made. She seemed to like the motion, the sound of his voice, the rhythm of his footsteps. Thomas helped where he could, fetching diapers, rocking the cradle, singing songs he'd learned at school. He took his role as big brother seriously, and slowly, the house that had been so empty for so long filled with the sounds of life. Crying and laughing and talking. The creak of the cradle, the patter of small feet on the stairs, the endless questions of a 6-year-old boy and the contented coos of a baby girl. Rowan had never imagined this. A family. A real one. Not just people living under the same roof, but people who chose each other, who fought for each other, who stayed. 2 years after the court hearing, Rowan stood on the porch at dawn and looked out at the land. The house was solid now. The barn was full. The garden was thriving. Rose was walking, toddling around the yard on unsteady legs while Thomas chased her, both of them laughing. Clara came out and wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her chin on his shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Everything. Nothing." "That's helpful." He smiled. "I'm thinking about how different things are. How different I am. You're a better man than when I met you." "I don't know about that." "I do. You were running when I met you, running from everything, and now you're here, building, fighting, staying. Because of you." "No, because of you. I just gave you a reason." He turned to face her. "You gave me more than a reason. You gave me a life." She kissed him. "We gave each other a life." "Yeah, I guess we did." They stood there watching the children play. The sun was warm on their faces. The wind carried the smell of growing things, crops and grass and possibility. "You think we'll be okay?" Clara asked. "I know we will." "How?" "Because we've survived everything they threw at us, and we're still standing. Together. Together." She rested her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Rowan Hale." It was something she said often now, but it still made his chest tight every time. "I love you too," he said, and he meant it with everything he had. Years passed. Thomas grew tall and strong, helping Rowan with the farm work and eventually taking over most of it. He was good with his hands, patient with the animals, smart about the land. By the time he was 16, he was running half the farm himself. Rose grew wild and stubborn, with Clara's fire and Rowan's determination. She climbed trees, caught frogs, refused to wear dresses unless absolutely forced. She learned to read before she was 5 and never stopped asking questions. They had another child, a boy they named Daniel, after Rowan's brother. He had Rowan's eyes and Clara's smile and a quiet strength that reminded everyone of the uncle he'd never met. The estate thrived. Not in the way Rowan's father had dreamed, grand and imposing, a monument to ambition, but in a quieter, more sustainable way. They raised cattle and chickens, grew wheat and corn and vegetables, helped neighbors when they needed it, took in stray animals and occasionally stray people, built a life that mattered. Rowan never forgot where he'd come from, never forgot the years he'd spent running, trying to outpace the guilt and grief that had defined him for so long. But he stopped letting it control him, stopped letting it tell him who he was. He was a husband now, a father, a friend, a member of the community. Those things mattered more than the past. Clara never stopped fighting, never stopped standing up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. She became known in town as someone you could count on, fierce and loyal and unbreakable. When the school teacher retired, Clara took over, teaching not just music but reading and arithmetic and everything else she knew. And the house that had been falling apart when Rowan returned, became a home. A place where people were welcome, where children laughed, where memories were made instead of mourned. One evening, when Rowan was in his 50s and his hair had gone gray at the temples, he sat on the porch with Clara watching the sunset. Their grandchildren, Thomas's kids, were playing in the yard, the same yard where Thomas and Rose had played years before. "You think we did all right?" Rowan asked. Clara looked at him. "With what?" "All of it. The kids, the farm, life." "Yeah, I think we did better than all right. Even with how it started? Especially because of how it started. We took something broken and made it whole." Rowan nodded slowly. "I still think about that first day sometimes, when you pointed the rifle at me." Clara laughed, a real laugh, full and warm. "I should have shot you, probably, but I'm glad I didn't." "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands, watching the children play. The land stretched out around them, still wild in places, still rough around the edges, but theirs. Completely and utterly theirs. "You ever regret it?" Clara asked. "Staying?" "Not once. Not even when things got hard? Especially not then." She smiled. "Good. Because I don't regret it either. Even though I dragged you into a court battle and almost got us killed? Even then, you gave me something I thought I'd lost." "What's that?" "A future." Rowan squeezed her hand. "You gave me one too." They watched the sun sink below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and pink. The wind carried the smell of rain coming, good rain, the kind that would help the crops. And for the first time since he could remember, Rowan Hale felt complete. Not because everything was perfect. It wasn't. There were still hard days, still struggles, still moments when the past crept up and reminded him of everything he'd lost. But he had something stronger now, something that couldn't be taken away. He had family, he had home, he had purpose, and that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Descent. Thomas came up the porch steps, now a man in his 30s with his own wife and children, his father's broad shoulders and his mother's quick smile. "Pa," he said, "thought you'd want to know. The east fence needs fixing again. Storm last night took down a section." Rowan sighed. "Always something, isn't it?" "Always. I'll look at it tomorrow." "I can handle it if you want." "You sure?" Thomas smiled. "Yeah, I'm sure. Done it 100 times." Rowan looked at his son, tall and strong and capable, with his own family now, his own life, and felt pride swell in his chest. "All right, it's yours." Thomas nodded and headed back down the steps. His kids followed, asking questions, full of energy and noise and life. Clara leaned against Rowan's shoulder. "He's a good man." "Yeah, he is." "You raised him right. We raised him right." "Same thing." Rowan kissed the top of her head. Her hair was gray now, too, but she was still the same woman who'd pointed a rifle at him all those years ago. Still fierce. Still stubborn. Still his. "Yeah," he said. "I guess it is." They sat there as darkness fell, the stars coming out one by one. The house behind them was warm and bright, full of voices and laughter and the sounds of family. The land around them was quiet and still, waiting for tomorrow. And Rowan realized something he'd been too stubborn to see before. He hadn't come back to sell the estate. He'd come back to save it. And in saving it, he'd saved himself. The frontier was hard, unforgiving. It took more than it gave, wore people down until there was nothing left. But if you fought for it, if you bled for it and built on it, and refused to let it break you, it gave back something worth having, a legacy. Not in land or money, but in the people you loved and the life you built together. Rowan Hale had spent 5 years running from his past, and now finally he'd built a future worth staying for. Clara's hand tightened in his. "What are you thinking?" "That I'm glad I came home." "Me too. Even though it was a mess? Especially because it was a mess. The best things usually are." Rowan smiled. "Yeah, they are." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of coming rain. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled low and steady. But the house was solid. The roof didn't leak anymore. And the people inside were safe and warm and together. That was all that mattered. Rowan stood and helped Clara to her feet. She moved slower now, both of them did, but they moved. "Come on," he said. "Let's go inside." "In a minute. I want to stay out here a little longer." "All right." They stood together on the porch, watching the storm roll in across the prairie. Lightning flickered on the horizon, brief and beautiful. The wind grew stronger, but it didn't feel threatening, just alive. But they didn't move, didn't rush for shelter, because they'd weathered worse storms than this, so much worse. And they'd do it again if they had to, together, always together. And as the first drops of rain began to fall, gentle at first, then harder, Rowan wrapped his arm around Clara and held her close. The house stood strong behind them, lights glowing in every window. The land stretched out before them, dark and vast in theirs. And the life they'd built, messy and imperfect and absolutely real, was finally, truly complete. They'd survived. They'd fought. They'd built something that would outlast them both. And in the end, that was the only legacy that mattered. Not the name on the deed or the size of the estate or the money in the bank, but the love they'd shared, the family they'd created, the home they'd made from nothing. Rowan looked at Clara, rain dripping from her hair, and saw everything he'd ever needed. "Ready?" he asked. She smiled. "Always." They walked inside together, closing the door on the storm. And Rowan Hale, who had once been a man with nothing, knew he had everything.